Greetings, Miss Story Mystery here with another collection of mysteries and oddities from around the web. Enjoy. Let me start off by saying I consider myself a rational person and a skeptic. I don't believe in ghosts, demons, etc. That being said, I don't know how to explain what I witnessed about 10 years ago. I was on a train heading upstate, sitting by the window listening to music. Suddenly, the doors that separate the train cars slide open, and in steps maybe the strangest looking man I've ever seen. I can't really describe it well. His face was just very angular and strange, like a real-life caricature. He also looked homeless and had an unbearable stench that filled the entire train car. He wore dirty but bright, colorful clothes, and what looked like a tutu or skirt thing. The whole thing was just strange, but I didn't pay much attention because I've seen much stranger. So, he's working his way down the aisle, and I'm holding my breath until he reaches the other end of the car and proceeds to the next one. Here's the part that still messes with me to this day. It happened again. I don't mean he went back from the other direction. I mean this guy came back into our train car from the way he originally came in. This is a single-decker train with one aisle, and there was no way I wouldn't have noticed him coming past me again. Just no way. My mind is racing, and I'm kind of freaking out. Did this guy somehow climb on top of the train, Mission Impossible style, and come back in? No, that's crazy, I thought, but I had no explanation. I was mystified. It was pure déjà vu, except it happened right before my eyes. The interesting thing is, almost everyone else on that train car seemed to acknowledge something astonishing and strange had just taken place. I don't know why I didn't yell, "Did you guys just see that, or am I crazy?" No one said anything, but we all sort of looked at each other wearing these puzzled looks on our faces. I still think about what happened all the time, and I've never been able to rationally explain it. I grew up in a townhome backed up to a golf course with a lake. I lived in the basement by myself with a main room and a small office with wall-to-wall sliding door closets, important later, that I used to play video games in. Kinda creepy as a 12-year-old, but nothing out of the ordinary. When we moved in, our neighbors told my mom to watch me extra carefully this winter because the lake on the golf course freezes over and looks like normal terrain when it snows. Apparently last winter, a man was walking his dog, fell through the ice, and died. So to be careful and not let me play too close in the winter. Like I said, the basement wasn't too creepy initially, but sometime during the winter, the foundation to the house cracked, and the lake water started to seep in. It wasn't disastrous, just some damp carpet and a bit of mold, but that is when things started to get creepy. I would always feel like I was being watched and unwanted in the room. Like when you enter a room and someone is angry with you, you can feel it in the air. It's that vibe. So I try and ignore it until one day I'm playing SNES in the office room. The sliding closet doors start making a banging noise. Thinking it's just someone upstairs, I turn to see the doors actually moving from the sound, like someone is trapped inside and hitting the door to get out. Bang, bang, bang. A minute into it, it gets more desperate and loud. Bang, bang, bang. I sat staring at the door while this door is going absolutely apeshit. After about 3 or so minutes, it begins to die down, then it stops completely. I was terrified and didn't know what to do. I sat on my couch, paralyzed, staring at the closet for about 5 more minutes, until I decided that it was probably just one of my sisters messing with me. I got up and put on my best I'm not scared face because I didn't want to give her the satisfaction. Opened the door, and nothing. No one is inside. It dawned on me what just happened, and I booked the F out of there. I didn't sleep downstairs for the remainder of the time we lived there. I didn't make the connection until years later between the man dying in the lake, the water seeping into the basement foundation, and the banging closet. That man, trapped under the ice, hitting his fists against the surface to escape the clutches of an icy death, replaying in my room. I was making a 4-hour drive on the freeway a few summers ago that I make on a semi-regular basis, and to avoid traffic, I have always preferred to do it late at night. So about halfway through the drive in the most desolate part of the state, at around midnight or 1, I saw some headlights behind me. At this time, there were very few cars around, but every now and then I'd see one. I'm kind of a lead foot on this road at night, so to get away from the glare, I stepped on it. Got to 80 miles per hour or so, put some distance between me and that car, and forgot about it. A few minutes later, the same car caught up to me. It had a roof rack, and I could tell the make from the rearview mirror. So I did the same thing, with the same result. Instead of trying to ditch the other car the next time, I just drove for a while. The car wasn't tailgating me or doing anything obnoxious, just following me. I would change lanes, and so would the other car. Eventually, I wanted to just see how committed this person was to following me, so I let off the gas entirely, coasted for a few minutes while my speed dropped to around 20 miles per hour on the freeway, mind you. The other car did the same thing. Then I punched it again, got to 100 miles per hour, lost the headlights, and thought that was weird. I didn't see the car for another few minutes, but sure enough, it caught up to me again. At this point, I decided that if this was going to become a problem, I didn't want it to become a problem at freeway speeds on a desolate highway. So I pulled into the next lighted rest stop where other cars were parked. The car also pulled off the freeway. I parked and watched the other car as it slowly drove through the parking lot and got back on the freeway without stopping. I waited a few minutes before getting back on the freeway and never saw the car again. I have no idea what that guy's idea was, but I'm glad I didn't find out. Prior moving into a rental home in my mid-20s, my move-in date was pushed back due to the previous tenants leaving an enormous mess in the home. Rotten food in the fridge, stains on the carpet, and a large mound of trash in the middle of the basement. On top of the pile of trash, the landlord told me he found 2 small dead dogs. One evening, my Dalmatian woke me up in the middle of the night because he was at the foot of my bed growling. I thought he'd had a bad dream and woke up confused. I tried to get him to lay back down a few times with no luck. After he kept this up, I sat up and slid down the end of the bed to see what he was upset about. I didn't notice at first, but after a few moments, I saw it. There was the ghost of one of the small dogs sniffing around the floorboards. I didn't notice what it was at first because its head was in the wall. It was only after it moved around that I recognized what I was looking at. I sat there, half scared, half in disbelief, watching it for a number of minutes. It looked like it was made out of moonlight, and most of its features were indistinguishable, except for the obvious silhouette of a dog. It continued to sniff around the room until it disappeared into a dresser that was against the wall in my room. Hands down, the creepiest thing I've seen in my life. My late father was a huge fan of National Geographic magazines. We owned them all, old and new, up until he died in 2008. One day he comes home after having been to a garage sale and proceeds to show us his score of a box of vintage National Geographic magazines. We start to sift through them, and in one of the mags was a childhood photo of me. A very small 2x3 photo of what was definitely me as a 4 or 5-year-old. The garage sale wasn't our neighborhood, and we didn't know the people having it at all. Still spooks me to this day. I overheard my 5-year-old talking after laying him down for the night. I try to listen, but it's very quiet. I walk in, ask who he's talking to, and he says, "The guy with the red eyes." My story. As far back as I can remember, there's a shadow man that stands outside my room and watches me sleep. I can only see about half of him as he always peeks into the door and never tries to come in. He was there all night, every night when I was a kid. He never really scared me, but didn't really comfort me either. I felt I had to tolerate it or he would be mad. When we moved, I was 7. He followed me to our new house. When I got a bit older, I decided I wanted to sleep with the door closed. Closed the door, fell asleep, and was woken up a while later to see my doorknob shaking and rattling like someone was trying to get in. I got up, opened the door, and told him that I wanted to sleep with my door closed. I said I would stick a sign on the door frame as long as it was there he could come in and out and not to use the door and to stop waking me up. Still have a sign on my door frame to this day, and I believe he still stands out there at night. Creeps my husband out when I tell him that. My uncle's story. A friend of his in school was having issues with family, so he went to live with his older sister. He starts complaining that weird stuff is happening in his room and gets to the point where he asks if he can sleep on the floor in his sister's room. She says no, but is starting to get worried about what is going on. She figures it is related to the family's stress and brushes it off. So they are both at home when she hears a huge crash and then screaming, like crazy, panicked screaming. She goes upstairs and can't get his door open. There are no locks on the doors, but it will not budge. Calls the cops and fire department. They show up and get the details, then try to get in the room. The screaming hasn't stopped. He is just going nuts. They eventually break down the door. He is pinned to the wall by a 4-legged chair. All 4 feet are stuck about 3 feet up the wall, holding him with his hands to the side against the wall. He is stuck there, trying to move, losing his mind. It took about 6 cops and firemen to get the chair off the wall. Once they broke the chair, it was almost like the chair lost power. It was in the local paper as the cops were called out. No official explanation. Kid was off school for a few weeks and was never the same kid again. Me, hubby, and child were living in an apartment. My son's closet was always cold, and I got weird vibes from it. Sometimes while I was alone during the day, 2 of his toys would go off by themselves in his closet. I was the only one home, and we had no pets. It would be dead quiet, and while I was reading in the silence, I would hear the toy from his closet. One of the toys was running out of batteries. It was a Winnie the Pooh toy, so when you press the button, it would open its mouth and spin around while talking. But since it was low on batteries, it sounded really demonic. So when the toys went off, I would not even investigate. I just ignored them the best I could. One time in this same apartment, I was taking a shower. While I was washing my hair, the faucet flew from the wall, shot between my legs, and slammed into the opposite wall with extreme force, while water was shooting crazily from the bathroom wall where the faucet used to be. I jumped as fast as I could out of the shower and ran out of the bathroom. I was the only one home, and it freaked me out so bad that it took me a few minutes to go back into the bathroom to turn the water off. When the maintenance men came in to fix it, the look that they gave each other when they saw it was odd. They even said that it was weird that it happened. I'm just glad that I wasn't injured, because before I shower, I sit down in the tub directly in front of the faucet to wash my face, etc. It would have caused me some serious damage if it hit me in the face or chest. Even if it would have hit me in the leg or something, it would have left a mark. My parents were traveling to the Bahamas, and I was staying with my grandparents. I was probably 10 at the time. I was feeling lonely and homesick and was crying a bit, probably around midnight. My grandparents were in a different part of the house. The air felt really heavy and absolutely dead quiet and dead still except for my sniffling. Out of nowhere, I heard a voice about 2 inches in front of my face say, "Oh, boo-hoo," in a flippant and sarcastic way. I don't think I moved for a solid few minutes, freaking out and listening. I woke my grandparents up and told them. They were a little bit unnerved. In the same house, my mom, when she was in her teens, came home from a party and was the only person in the house. She was walking down a hall to her room and she saw a man dressed in prison garb walk from her brother's bedroom to her parents'. He stopped, looked at her, then walked through the door. She called her cousins to search the house, but they never found any sign of anything unusual. There was a prison that was shut down a couple miles down the road, and decades before. She always speculated it was someone who had maybe died while fleeing and was reenacting an escape before the house was built there. My brother told me maybe 13 years ago that one night when he was falling asleep, he heard a loud bang sound. Not like a gunshot, but more of something hitting the wall at a high speed. He opened his eyes to find me standing in the dark corner of his room. My eyes were glowing red, he said. All he really saw was my shadowy figure and those bright red eyes. He called to me asking, "What the hell?" Apparently I didn't answer. He then continued, saying he turned his head to the clock near his bed and quickly looked back at the corner I was standing in and saw absolutely nothing. I was gone. What's even more terrifying is that he got up and went to his door. It was still locked. He opened it, walked down the hall to see my door still closed. He looked further down the hallway, only to see me standing in the middle of the hallway with my still glowing red eyes. He opened my door after seeing that, and that's when he became really frightened. There I was, laying passed out on my waterbed. To this day, he can't explain what or who he saw. After he told me all that, I'd been seeing those red eyes throughout my life, but only in the dark parts of my house. My dad tells a story from when I was a kid. We lived in an older house that had some strange things go on. An old guy had actually died there and was left in the house for weeks before anyone found him. We always kind of joked that he haunted the place, but we did hear stuff and some strange things happened. My dad was the only one who never bought into any of it. He is an atheist type who doesn't believe in anything like that. He will tell of this one strange time, though. He woke up in the middle of the night and said he was sure he heard someone rustling around in the basement. Now, the way our house was set up, the garage connected to the basement, and there was a full set of steps up to the main floor where our bedrooms were. When my dad heard the rustling, he thought someone broke in. He grabbed a baseball bat from the closet and made his way to the door at the top of the basement steps. He said that he could continuously hear the rustling. Then slowly, he heard the person walking up the creaky steps. One by one, clear as day, he could hear them walking and getting closer to the top. He readied the bat as the person stopped on the top step. He says that he then heard the sound you hear when someone grabs the doorknob, where you can kind of hear it jiggle in the door. Then he could hear and see it start to turn. Then nothing. The door never opened. He didn't hear another sound. He waited there for several minutes, bat raised, goosebumps on his arm. He never heard anyone go back down the steps or move at all. He finally turned on some lights and opened the door. The top step was soaking wet. Other than that, everything was totally normal. No one was there. That's the only story my dad has like that at all. He still gets the chills when he tells it, and had no explanation for it. My kids used to attend a local private school, which was an old converted church. I would do odd jobs and IT work in lieu of paying tuition. Since I had a regular day job, I would always go in there at night to do the work. One night around 2:00 a.m., while painting down in the basement, I realized I had left something upstairs on the main floor. I started walking up the stairs, and about halfway up, I hear the sound of a music box. This place was already pretty creepy, and that music box sound gave me the chills, but no big deal. So I go find the music box and close it to stop the music. I then grabbed the painting stuff I needed and began to head back down to the basement. Well, a few steps down the stairs, and I hear at least 3, maybe 4 more music boxes turn on, coming from multiple rooms. Scenes from every horror movie start flashing through my mind. I'm like frozen on the stairs, afraid to even turn around. That seemed to last forever, but was probably only a couple of seconds. I finally did turn around and booked out the front door, straight to my car, leaving all the painting stuff right where it was. I didn't give a crap. I'll buy new brushes. In the car, it felt like something was in the back seat. Same feeling followed me all the way home, into the house, into bed, etc. I didn't stop doing work at that school, but would only go there during the daytime. Nothing like that ever happened again. A few years back, I was in Colorado with some friends on a ski trip. Anyways, one particular night we were driving to our hotel, and it was around 3 a.m. We were driving up and down these winding roads, deep, deep in the mountains, which seemed like forever. It was pitch black outside, and we had to be at least 45 minutes from the nearest town, and it was cold, like see your own breath cold. As we're driving along, my friends and I all see 4 figures walking on the road towards us. We all get weird feelings inside, but I did especially, and the hair on my neck stood up. Something didn't seem right. We were way too far from a town, and it was too cold for hitchhikers or hikers of any sort. We get closer and closer, and as we got right next to these people, we slowed down and we realized that they literally had no faces. 4 people walking in the dead of night, wearing black hoods and cape-like gowns, and they had no faces. And by no faces, I mean like literally no eyes, mouth, ears, just blank faces, almost white in color. I'm familiar with ski masks, and these were not ski masks. They had hoods on like something from Scream almost. My friends and I all freak out, speeding away, and my toughest friend of all of us was crying. When I was about 8 years old, my mom and I came home from my gymnastics lesson right around dusk. It was November, and it was pretty cold outside, but my mom said I could play out in the yard until dinner was ready. My yard was rather large compared to my neighbors' yards, and the very back part of it was swampy and rather creepy. For some reason, I decided to go back there instead of playing on my swing set near the house. I was climbing on a fallen tree for a bit when I thought I heard my mom yell something from the house. I turned to walk back to the house when suddenly I heard this noise come from the 6-foot-high hedge that separated my yard from my neighbor's yard. It almost sounded like something from one of the Jurassic Park dinosaurs, kind of high-pitched and almost cute. I've never heard anything like it, and it's really hard to describe. I walked toward the hedge when suddenly there was this huge rustle as the thing stood up. All I could see above the hedge was its huge, horse-like head and huge ears. They were brindled and had long stalks that ended in a cup-like shape. Again, hard to describe. All I know, it was nothing I'd ever seen before. I screamed and ran toward the house as fast as I could. It jumped out of the bushes, chased me for a bit, and then I swear it flew off because I could hear a wing flapping sound as I ran. My dad was sent out to investigate the next morning since I was so scared. My dad was an environmental biologist, so if anyone would know what I saw, he would. All he found was a hole in the hedge and some strange, almost hoof-shaped marks on the ground that ended suddenly on our side of the hedge. He decided it was just a deer that I had startled. But what deer is more than 6 feet tall? I had seen its head above the hedge. My dad could never explain that. My parents had been putting an extension on the house, extending the basement, putting in a new giant family room, and adding a new entryway from the garage. A good chunk of the work was finished by this point, but we still had guys showing up to check out the work and carry on with next steps. One morning, it was just me in the house. My parents go to work early, and my brother was in junior high by this point, so he left maybe 30 minutes before I did to catch a different school bus. I was getting ready to leave and walking towards the new side entryway door when I heard a deep voice call out, "Hello!" So I turned back toward where I heard the voice, called out hello, and went looking. The guys working on the house often turned up as we were leaving. Most of them had been here before and knew where shit was. Some of them might have been only helping out for a day or two and didn't have a clue where anything was, so I went looking for the guy. Couldn't find anyone. Looked out the front window. No one was parked in our driveway. Again, not all that suspicious. Our driveway is steep, and it was kind of an icy morning. People usually parked down in the cul-de-sac and walked up. So I just shrugged, figured I heard wrong, and headed back for the door again to leave for school. As I passed by the steps leading to the basement, I heard a short burst of loud whispering, followed by one voice quieting them by saying, "Shh, she's leaving," and then total silence. Scared the hell out of me by that point, so I bolted. Barely stopped long enough to lock the door as I was leaving. No cars at the bottom of the driveway. No sign of anyone turning up to work on the house. Nothing. The basement in our old house always made me feel super uncomfortable. It always felt like someone was watching. My parents both left for work about an hour before my school bus came, so I'd watch cartoons for an hour. One morning, I distinctly heard the sound of the basement door opening. It had a distinctive noise because of how it was mounted in the doorway, so obviously someone had broken in a basement window and was coming upstairs. I yelled out, "Please don't hurt me. I'm going to walk out the front door right now. I haven't seen you, so please don't hurt me. I promise I'll say that I left for school and didn't see anything." I had my backpack sitting by me in the living room, by the way. Standing at the end of the driveway where my bus would pick me up, I could hear plates and glasses being smashed in the kitchen because the kitchen window would have been cracked open. But that afternoon when I came home, nothing was broken or stolen. There weren't any other incidents at that house either. When I was a kid, I was in the kitchen making a sandwich or something when I heard some noise and noticed my little brother peeking at me from behind the wall. When I looked at him, he grinned and hid behind the wall. "I see you," I said, and tiptoed over to the wall. I popped my head around and was like, "Gotcha!" But no one was there. Then I remembered I was home alone. When I was little, I lived next door to a graveyard. One night I was sleeping in my brother's room on the floor. I watched as the shadow of a person moved across from one wall to the other while everyone else in the house was asleep. Smoking a cigarette outside, as sober as a worm, I see two very bright, glowing red balls. It looked like they were squirrels playing tag, but they were indeed bright, glowing red balls that almost looked transparent. After a good 2 minutes of watching this, the balls then shot up about 20 feet in the sky, hovered menacingly, and just fell. I ran over to the house across the street to look in their yard and see where they went. They vanished, and that was something I will probably never see again. When I was a kid, I woke up in the middle of the night to my bed shaking. Normally, that would scare the crap out of me, but instead I was just kind of annoyed. I rolled over and muttered, "Stop it." The shaking stopped immediately. Then a male voice right beside me saying, "Sorry." That's when I freaked out. I'm pretty sure my childhood house was haunted. I hope you enjoyed these creepy tales. If you did, please like and subscribe, and I will be back with more mysteries and oddities from around the web soon.